Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeffrey Romeo.
And I am Yanette Brunette.
And this is The Global Perspective. And today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting speech Obama ended 2014 with. And that was the speech about Cuba.
I mean, this has historical significance, not just for the United States, but for foreign policy overall.
And I think we should say up front, both I and Janet were born in Cuba.
So things might get a little bit passionate,
so bring out
to say the least.
So bring out the popcorn.
Yes, it's going to be one of those shows.
So what's the first topic of conversation, Janet?
Okay, let's talk about how you personally felt about the speech. As a Cuban, as an American, as a citizen of this world.
Okay, because obviously both of us saw both speeches. The speech Obama made and Castro made.
So the overall connotations of the speech and what it actually means to you, to the country, to the world.
I honestly felt that sometimes both speeches were a bit misleading to what they were going to say. It was straight up political, obviously. But I felt it was not really saying what they're going to do exactly. They were just politicizing everything, and Obama was saying Spanish and everything at the same time. So, I mean...
Well, he even quoted
Jose Marti.
Exactly. He quoted Jose Marti, and he said, like Cubans say, esto no va a estar fácil.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I know.
How did you feel?
Well, I felt like steps were made. So I like the fact that there's some dialogue happening between countries. I mean, we're neighbors. We're very close. Miami is only 90 miles away from Havana.
Key West.
Oh, there you go. Key West.
But like you mentioned earlier today in an earlier discussion we were practicing for the show, you mentioned that they have been in talks for a long time. This has been going on for a while.
Yes,
it wasn't just...
This has happened. This started probably back from the Bush administration.
Right.
Condoleezza Rice and the Castro brothers, at this point, both of them are pretty much in charge. They had talks because they wanted to release the political prisoners.
Right.
However, apparently from 2009 that Obama took office, there has been dialogue back and forth between both countries to see, mostly in terms of the political prisoners. Not so much the embargo. The embargo is just that thing that's going to lead to the negotiations.
Speaking about the embargo, how do you feel about it?
Well, Obama said that the embargo has failed to advance our interest in this past 50 years. And I agree. It hasn't served any real interest, and it hasn't led to anything solid. However, the real reason for the embargo has always been it was an economic embargo against
they were basically blockading Cuba.
Because when Fidel took office, he nationalized most of the American industries that were in Cuba. He nationalized the sugar fields. He nationalized telephone companies that were in Cuba. So as a reaction, Eisenhower, he started he put in place a blockade so American companies won't do business in Cuba. That with the Soviet Union turned into a political ideological conflict. So
but we get that part. However, do you feel it's beneficial to lift the embargo? Yes or no? For both countries. I'm not only talking about the United States. For both countries, do you think it's beneficial? Yes or no?
I personally don't see the benefit. At the end of the day, this is a dictatorship.
It's a communist state. The government is basically going to regulate every single thing.
Exactly. So the people are not going to see the benefit anyways. And Obama said in his speech, he said that this is going to advance the efforts of the U.S. in terms for human rights. And
personally, like a little, like what I was thinking, because the day that was going on, me and you had similar experiences. We noticed everyone around Miami was going crazy. They thought that everything was going to change, and you're basically lying to the people when they said that. It's literally a lie.
Yeah, nothing's going to change.
Nothing's going to change in the state.
We're going to talk about the powers of the presidency in a moment.
We will.
So I mean, realistically speaking, nothing really going to change, and what's important here is the Cuban people, because this is just an economic strategy and a political strategy.
It is a political strategy, complete political strategy.
It means nothing, and at the end of the day, it means nothing to the Cuban people who are the ones suffering. People in Cuba still have no freedom of religion, they have no freedom of expression, no freedom of assembly, they cannot speak against the government.
So you agree, you basically agree that this embargo is not going to change anything.
It's not.
It's not going to change anything.
Having it is not going to change anything, and lifting it won't change anything.
Exactly.
However, the symbolic stance of the embargo means more than any actual consequence that the embargo being lifted is going to have. It's not going to have any significance per se in the people. People are still going to be oppressed. People are still going to go to jail for eating a cow because the animals are owned by the government. However, the symbolism behind the embargo was just for pure pressure, pure leverage against the regime to get rid of that government.
Right.
So, like Raul said, the Cuban government is taking this as a victory. As a small island in the Caribbean withstood 50 years of the biggest power in the world, their economic sanctions. So what message is that going to send to countries like Iran?
That's literally a complete hypocrisy in and of itself.
Please explain.
It's a complete hypocrisy in and of itself. Because for Raul Castro to honestly say this is a huge victory for Cuba symbolically, so what? The people are still going to be starving.
He doesn't care about the people, though.
Well, I never said he did. You honestly think that those countries are going to open up trade with Cuba since they haven't been doing it ever since?
What countries?
Just countries in general.
Countries have always traded with Cuba. The only country that had any restriction in Cuba was the United States. No other country in the world cares about the embargo that the United States placed in Cuba. Fact check it, please.
Fact check it, please.
By all means, all day, every day.
Actually, I'm not really even sure about that either.
Yeah.
I'm not really
it's
sure.
True. I mean,
but
in Spain, people go back and forth.
But what I am trying to get from this symbolic thing, what does it really matter? A symbolic victory is not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. That's literally.
But it's not going to do anything for the country, but our perspective and our role abroad, it is going to be damaged because Iran has had economic sanctions since the 1980s from the revolution, the whole hostage situation.
A while.
Okay, and it has never led anywhere. It hasn't. Do we agree on that?
Right, that's agreed.
It hasn't. So should we lift our economic sanctions on Iran just because the regime hasn't changed?
But wait a minute,
of course not.
But before we're not going to talk about Iran. But before we end up by Iran doesn't even want to go to a negotiating table with us because they want to develop a nuclear weapon. You know that's legit.
Well, you know that now they're in the negotiating table with us because we have a common enemy.
But realistically, are they going to sign? Are they going to sign a treaty with us?
Yes. Okay. So Iran, they're back in the negotiating table because we have a common enemy. Now, why did the U.S. is trying to lift the embargo? Because of the fear, the insecurity with Russia. Because Russia is very unstable. It's for political leverage. So later on, it could be a Cuban Missile Crisis number 2. We have some leverage in the island because the first time around, we had an economic embargo right then. And Fidel saw us as the enemy from back then. Okay? So when the Soviet Union came to negotiate with Cuba, it was easier for them to allow these weapons because they had a common enemy, the United States. So right now, we're not being an enemy anymore. We are trying to help them. We're trying to be partners again. So I think that the real reason for the embargo, besides the exchange of prisoners, it's for leverage against Russia.
Okay, but look who's number 1 on the list for importing and exporting for Cuba. It's Russia. It's still Russia.
What I said.
It's
because that's why the United States wants to put this embargo on. I honestly believe, and I don't know, I haven't checked that maybe there's other scholars that agree with me or not, but I personally believe that this is just a strategic move in part of the United States to prevent any further negotiation with Russia. Because right now, China and Cuba are best friends.
Right.
So Russia has been knocking with the whole spy boats and stuff that went to Cuba and Venezuela, which brings me to my second point. The United States lifted the embargo in Cuba, but toughened up sanctions in Venezuela. The same kind of regime.
I think we should just say, what are the powers of the president? Legit.
Exactly.
They're constantly disputed. What are the powers of the president? They always call Obama an emperor for executive orders. Let's get something realistically here. Due to the powers of the Constitution, he does have executive order powers. However, when it comes to international agreements, which can be treaties, they need to be confirmed by the Senate with a 2/3 majority. And we all know who's in the Senate this term.
Republicans.
And we're not saying Republicans are the enemy. We're saying they're not going to side with Obama.
Exactly. And they have Cubans in Congress. They have Marco Rubio. They have Ileana Ross.
Ted Cruz.
And these are very vocal against lifting the embargo. And they have pretty strong ties to Florida. And if the Democrats want to take Florida, then maybe there should be some sort of compromise there. Who knows?
Gotta love politics.
Politics.
Everything connects to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love it.
And especially, there's a lot of Cubans in Miami and in Florida overall. I wonder.
Most of them were Republican.
Yes.
Most of them were Republican.
But Miami-Dade County last time voted for Obama.
No, like and
Tampa too. And there are a lot of Cubans in Tampa.
No, actually, Miami-Dade. Actually, I think it's Miami-Dade County, Broward County, and Palm
West
Beach.
Palm
I
Beach.
think it's Palm Beach County that they're all blue in every election. I think.
And what are the most important cities in Florida?
Oh yeah, the most
populated.
One can
argue.
The most populated, exactly, for sure, because the entire state is just red after that.
So maybe this would affect the Democrats in 2016.
We'll see.
We'll have to see. So, we spoke about the Obama speech. So now I want to get you. How do you feel about Raul Castro's speech?
Well, honestly, I didn't get much out of it. To be honest, I didn't feel. But the only comment that it stirred up like what the hell when he asked to extend the powers for Obama, like basically to extend his executive powers. That was like, what?
Yeah, it's like really, we don't need to be in the same position that you're in.
Exactly.
It's okay.
Exactly. You can be in that position. We don't want to be in that position. Exactly. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Something that's very interesting that the Pope was involved in this because he gave credit to the Pope when he was giving his speech. And I think people underestimate the power of the Pope's influence in this world.
Well, this is a perfect example of how powerful this guy
is. He is. I mean, you have to understand something. And the core belief about politics, it's power to the people. Mm-hmm. That's the core belief about politics. Mm-hmm. And the Pope, the religion is Catholic. The world has 1 billion Catholics. Mm-hmm. That's pretty influential.
It is.
That is pretty influential.
And the Catholic Church has a lot of things to do with politics because there's issues like abortion. There's issue about marriage.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Religion is very, very engraved.
Something interesting, though. Uh-huh. How much do you think he had in this agreement? Or this conversation between Obama? And how much... Do you think it was superficial? Or do you think it was like... What do you think? How extensive?
I mean, I think that the Pope was there for...
Maybe one meeting?
For elegance and for diplomacy.
God bless his
and just bless it because I think Raul said in his speech, this talks have been going on for a while. It did not just happen now, it's been happening since Obama took office. They've been trying to lift these embargoes and started these negotiations. So I think honestly the Pope probably had a very minor role in this.
But
and Canada, he also talked about Canada.
But I think
Canada had a role.
But I think it's just interesting that they mentioned the Pope in this, because people underestimate.
Yeah. Actually, fun fact, you know that any president of Cuba cannot set foot in the United States, so that's why they met in Canada.
Oh no, for sure, yeah, I know. That's why Obama said that he was in the end of Obama's speech. He said he was looking forward at the opportunity of traveling to Cuba one day.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. But the big question: how did you feel about that comment about extending the executive powers?
Yeah, I was not having that. I was not having it.
I wasn't having it either.
It's not okay. Because you can rule your country in your own ways, but do not encourage others to do the same. Exactly. Just because you want to advance your powers and you completely have no regards for your constitution and your own limits, you don't have to instigate others to do the same.
And again, I encourage everyone to look at the Constitution and understand the powers of the president. He cannot...
And to actually also listen to Raul's speech. It's very interesting.
Obama cannot go into Cuba and change anything in Cuba. Even establishing an embassy in Cuba would be considered an agreement between two countries. That's the reason we don't have an embassy in North Korea. We had an embassy in Iran, but then the whole hostage situation came on. So basically, Obama still needs confirmation from not Congress, from the Senate to make an embassy. And he still needs to nominate an ambassador, which he needs to confirm with the Senate also. So, I mean...
We're probably locked in long ways.
This is not like it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a while.
My issue with Raul's speech is the fact that... so the negotiations started with the prisoners, right? The exchanging of prisoners. Well, Raul mentioned in his speech that in 2001, Fidel Castro promised the Cuban people that the 5 spies were going to return. Again, solidifying how this just serves as a legitimacy for the Cuban government. As a symbolic, meaningful, I don't know how legitimate they perceive this victory to be. But it is a victory because Fidel promised something and he sadly delivered.
Another symbolic victory, right? Another symbolic victory. What are you gonna do?
Aren't they nice?
Words and actions. Words and actions.
Well, in this case, were words and actions. He promised and he delivered.
I know. One interesting question to think about. Since they mentioned Fidel and Raul simultaneously, do you think, maybe behind the scenes, even though obviously Fidel's not the president anymore, do you think that maybe Fidel has more influence than people think?
Oh, I definitely think that he has the power and he still controls the power. I mean, if he's alive still.
I still think he's the brains.
Yeah.
So, but again, we go back to saying something. It's still a communist state. It's gonna be a communist state. Do you think it's ever gonna change in our lifetime? Would it ever be democratic?
I really hope so. And I studied democracy and the democratization process a lot, and I find it to be fascinating. And the only hope Cuba has is to find a reformer, somebody that it's already within the government, and it just needs that light.
It's gonna be so hard.
It's gonna be very hard. It's very
because
hard.
You have to understand that next in line is gonna be another Castro.
Yes, and also it's very important. Cuba has never completely ruled democratically before. Never. When they gained independence from Spain, they went through, Cuba fell into dictatorship, and they've been through dictatorship on dictatorship. The last one was Batista, and that was a right-wing dictatorship, and now it's a left-wing dictatorship. So they've never been free.
Eventually they're going to meet in the middle.
I hope, and I hope eventually they're going to get their stuff together.
I think once there's an ambassador of the United States in Cuba, maybe something will start.
There was an ambassador of the United States in Cuba when Batista was in power, and people...
Different times.
And different kind of regime.
This is a new era. Maybe, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe when there's an ambassador to Cuba, maybe basically there's gonna open up relations with Cuba a little better. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our very intense back and forth when it comes to this. We are definitely gonna want to hear your input on what we have to say.
We're welcome to comments, questions,
and complete criticism.
Even more topics to discuss in the show. You can reach us at our Twitter and Instagram page. My Instagram page is Miss Brunette, MISS_BRUNET, and Twitter, Yanet, YANET, B.
And my Twitter is at the next Depp, like Johnny Depp, the next Depp. You can add me on Facebook, just look up my name, JEFFREYROMEU. I'm the only one with that last name and name. So other than that, I hope you all have a nice day, and see you next time.